Canada, like your faith is really private, and even to have like you don't even have a relationship with God, it's not kind of acceptable. So I find in marriage prep to help them rediscover the basics about baptism and that you are a relationship with God together. Yeah, you have to kind of go to that level now, and it's also marriage prep has to encompass like the very basics of Christianity and in an attractive, dynamic way for young people.
We are back with another interview from the Marriage Catechumenate Summit in Houston, Texas. Today, we look to the Great White North as we talk to Dr. Ellen Roderick, co-director of the Diocesan Centre for Marriage, Life, and Family in the Archdiocese of Montreal. We talk about the history of the Catholic Church in Montreal and Canada, and talk about why marriage preparation is a wonderful moment, not just for catechesis, but for re-examining the meaning and importance of other sacraments we participated in, namely baptism. The documentary is still underway, but we hope you enjoy this bonus interview in the meantime. Bye.
I'm Ellen Roderick. I'm the director for the Centre for Marriage, Life, and Family at the Archdiocese of Montreal in Quebec, Canada.
So tell us a little bit about life in Quebec. What is it like to be Catholic there? Like, what is some of the history of the church in that part of the world that makes it interesting and unique?
Sure. Well, there's a very long history, but briefly, it was settled by French Catholic missionaries. So we have a great history of belonging to the church. So every street name, every town name, and up into recently into the 60s and 70s, there was a moment when it seems like everyone left the church almost overnight. They call it the Quiet Revolution. And so we no longer have a Catholic school system or Catholic hospitals, things that you might take for granted down here, like places to sustain the faith. And there's a kind of a general like anti or very suspicious of the church. Yeah, it's almost suspicious if you have faith. You're seen as kind of irrational. So the church doesn't have a strong place in culture. So I'm not from there. I'm from another part of Canada, but I worked there for 8 years. So I really feel it's like mission. It's a land of mission to share my experience of the church and also to be open to them, and the remnants of the church and the history of the church is so rich. So there's a lot there I think that can be worked with or discovered. Yeah.
In that kind of evangelization where people may have had, whatever their history is with their experience of the church, whether that's personally or familial, and there's like an amount of like suspicion or guard put up. How do you evangelize? How do you encounter somebody who has that, whose first reaction is to be like,
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, you have to be yourself. Like, just to be myself, and they kind of see, oh, you have interests, you like movies, you know what's going on in the world, so you can kind of meet, and you also have faith, so it becomes kind of interesting to them. But in the context of marriage preparation, we have very few couples that get married. We have the lowest marriage rate in Canada and in Quebec in the world. So the highest number of people just living together or living common law or even getting civilly married, but very few religious marriages. So then you've got these kids or young adults coming for marriage prep, and they're not probably that interested. A lot of them haven't been to church in a very long time, maybe since confirmation. But with our team, I find we try to make it attractive. So the way we prepare the room, the welcome we give them, the couples we choose to, and the priests that present, we try to make it an experience of beauty and of welcome, so that that's their first experience again of coming back to church.
Yeah, there's a level of intentionality that you have to have in order to not alienate or scare them away, and to tell them, like, remind them that this is a welcoming place. But what you've said a lot of them like coming for marriage prep that haven't been in the church for a while. What's prompting them to even get married at the church, to come into the marriage prep to begin with?
Culturally, there's a link with the church, so maybe it's something that's always been done in their families. So we have a big Italian culture, and I'm not saying all of Quebecers don't go to church, but a lot of them, it's because their grandparents might expect it, or it's just what's done.
And so like now you're here at this summit where we're combining the minds and experiences of people from all over our continent. What have been some of the things that popped up, or some of the things that you've found interesting, or just like, somebody else sees this, or somebody else is experiencing something I'm experiencing, or they're doing something they're seeing something that's completely different from what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. Oh, so many things. But I guess what comes up to mind is two things I've shared from my own experience in Canada and how it's corresponded. So it just came up in a small group. We were talking about the phase of like the 2 months before marriage and what the church is sort of saying should happen or suggest should happen in that phase. And one is to discover the wedding liturgy. And I'm learning in my network in Montreal through the young people that come, the sacrament of marriage, you'd think it's a sacrament. So it's built on the first sacraments of baptism. But in all the documents, we don't really they don't really say we have to help young people know what the sacrament of baptism is. It's sort of presupposed. But where I come from, most of us, it happened when we were young and we've never given it too much thought since. So then through marriage preparation to actually rediscover and talk about what does it mean that we're baptized, what happened to you as a child. And I do a lot of catechesis with the 3 to 6 year olds through a method catechesis of the Good Shepherd, where they talk a lot about symbols and gestures. So I even like to do that with adults, use the methodology that might be adapted to say how a child learns, but it's really correspondent to all of us. So to rediscover our baptism. And when I shared that with the group, everyone's like, that's great. Yeah, it's right. We really need to build on baptism. And the other experience I recently shared this afternoon in our marriage prep workshops, which is over a weekend with many different presenters. Sometimes the presenters and priests would just mention prayer and say it's important to pray. And about 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, we had a couple raise their hand and said, you're talking about prayer. When are you going to tell us what it is and how to pray? And I thought, wow. So we had to kind of debrief in my team after this weekend, say, wow, we never thought about that young people don't know how to pray. They've not been taught. So we've sort of thought about it. And now a priest who's really dynamic comes in and leads a 3-hour workshop, not just teaching them academically about prayer, but giving them opportunities to pray as a couple and different styles of prayer, praying the rosary together. So we're learning from the experience of very, very simple faith or distant faith that it's helping us repropose the treasures of the faith in a new way to young people.
What a beautiful insight, because I think that is something that people who might have grown up in the church or a convert or something do take for granted. And I know when I was going through marriage prep with my wife, that's something that we struggled with at the beginning, like the saying it out loud part. We just had never done that.
Yeah, it's so awkward.
Yeah, and that felt weird.
And it's very intimate and awkward. So if we can kind of show them, and I find coming from a culture that hear you guys say God bless America. The taxi cab driver was even playing Christian music when I arrived. Kind of like your faith is really private, and even to have. You don't even have a relationship with God. It's not kind of acceptable. So I find in marriage prep to help them rediscover the basics about baptism and that you are a relationship with God together. Yeah, you have to kind of go to that level now. And it's also marriage prep has to encompass the very basics of Christianity and in an attractive, dynamic way for young people.
In that way, I guess the catechumenate really kind of emphasizes that a catechesis of you have to really teach them, and not just about what marriage is supposed to be, but about what what their entire faith is.
Yeah, the basics of Christianity.
Before you can even tackle what marriage is.
Yeah, and often now it's at the same time. So you're trying to do both all at once. And an experience of church, most of them don't have a parish. So how do you give them an experience of belonging to the communion of other people? Yeah. So it has its challenges, but I think it's a ministry that we enjoy. And
I don't know, what you guys are doing is awesome in being able to reintroduce people to a history, to a family lineage that they have, and for whatever reason it's been, left aside. But
I have to say though, it's only coming away from it, being here, that you rediscover what you have. So I think I'm really grateful they've gathered us together, because there's not a lot of opportunities to meet with other leaders that work in marriage, life, and family. There's few dioceses that have full-time staff. So that's one of the reasons I really wanted to come, is to meet others. And so I'm really grateful that we were gathered together, because it's exciting.
It's needed, yeah. So as you walk away from this, what's something you hope to take away, or you hope to gain before that you can reintroduce to your community, to those people you're serving over there?
Yeah. Well, so many things, but I had this experience in my small group. There's a couple who do specifically marriage ministry in the Vietnamese community, and they're based in Arizona. But they accompany couples in their home. So they take people and they actually invite the couples to shadow them as they live family life for a day or two. So I love the idea of doing marriage prep in the home and not in the church basement. So I think this idea of trying to get back into the home is an idea I'd never had before. So that's one thing I'll take away amongst many.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Of course,
we wish you the best in your ministry.
Thank you. Yeah.